Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. I welcome you all back to today's weekly explained session. As you know, every Friday at 8 p.m. we bring this session to you where we try and choose some of the most important and relevant topics that have been in the news throughout the week or so. Today's topic, as you can see on the screen, is the old pension scheme controversy. As you know, it is election season in India almost every few months. Whenever we have elections, we have a lot of political parties making many promises to please their voters. One promise that has been made up by a lot of opposition parties is to bring the old pension scheme back if they are elected to power in certain states. Especially we see the Congress government making these promises in different states, be it Gujarat elections, be it the Himachal Pradesh elections, and even in Madhya Pradesh for the upcoming elections. However, many expert economists and the RBI also have spoken openly against the old pension scheme. So in today's class, we will be discussing what exactly is the old pension scheme. As compared to the new pension scheme, what are the key points of differences between the two? How is old pension scheme bad politics? And what is the current status of Indian states when it comes to the pension load that they are right now facing? So without any further delay, let's begin with the class today. As you know, the Reserve Bank of India just a few days back came out with a report in which they highlighted the financial status of different states in India. They talked about how much financial burden right now is on various states in India. Although the report specifically was not about the old pension scheme, but the Reserve Bank of India made it very, very clear that if states go back to the old pension scheme, as many states have already done, it would be disastrous for the economy in the long run. Now, why is it that the RBI is worried about this? What are the different states that are going back to this? Let me share with you certain examples. Madhya Pradesh, where the elections will be approaching in a few months. Gujarat, where the elections were just held. Himachal Pradesh, again, where the elections were just held. In all these states, the Congress party especially made the promise that we will bring back the old pension scheme. In Himachal Pradesh, in fact, where the Congress party has come back to power, the cabinet has officially announced bringing back the old pension scheme as well. So what exactly is the idea of the old pension scheme and how is it different as compared to the new pension scheme or the newer version that we have today? Let's try and understand in very simple terms. You all know there are thousands and lakhs of people who have this dream of getting a government job in India for various reasons. You are also one of those. That is why you are here watching me right now. There are various reasons why people in India are after a government job. Some reasons may include that they want to contribute to the society. Some want to play an important role in shaping up India of tomorrow. Some want the stability of a government job. While others also look forward to the fact that even after you retire, a government job has always been giving you some benefits in the form of pension. Now, pension in very simple terms is a monetary benefit that you get after you retire, after you stop working officially. Now, earlier, that is the old pension scheme, the system was very, very simple. When any government official retired, whatever last salary you got, let's assume that your last salary at the time of your retirement was 80,000 rupees. Then automatically, as soon as you retire, you will start getting a pension of half of your last salary. This was the old pension scheme. 50% of the last drawn salary that you had will be given to you in the form of pension. For this purpose, there was no money deducted from your salary. Whatever salary you got, you never had a part of your salary taken away or cut down because it will be given to you later in the form of pension. No. Also, it was fixed. There was no deduction in that. Everyone knew the formula was very simple. Whatever is the last drawn salary that you had before your retirement, half of that will be your pension, as simple as that. Not just this, another attractive part was that you did not have to pay any tax on the pension that you received in the form of this old pension scheme. Because it was a fixed amount and everyone knew what the pension will be, it was also called the defined benefit scheme. No fluctuations, nothing. The money was not invested in the market, the money was not invested anywhere, it was not really dependent on any other reason. Not just this, the salary, just like the salary increased, the pension also increased with time. As you know, the government of India appoints pay commissions. Apart from the pay commissions also, the government of India from time to time announces a hike in something called the DA. What is DA? As you know, DA stands for DNS allowance. DNS allowance in simple terms means the government realizes that things become costlier with time, that there is inflation. So in order to beat inflation or in order to cope up with inflation, so that the people can afford the same living within the same salary, the government increases a part of their salary along with increasing inflation. This is called DA, that is DNS allowance. Every few months you see announcements coming in from the government that DA has been increased by 5%, 7%, 2%, 10%. So DA, which is calculated on your basic income. So if your basic salary, let's say, is 20,000 rupees, then you get a DA of, let's say, 100%, 110%, 80, 90%. That DA component keeps on increasing for your salary after some time. Whenever an increment in the DA is announced, the same increment applies to your pension as well. So it is not like your pension remains fixed. Your pension also increases with time. This also is a big part of the problem. First, the government is not taking any part of your salary to be given to you as a pension later on. Secondly, that pension bill is also increasing with time. It is not fixed always. So this old pension scheme was always a big concern. Now, what are the major issues, or what used to be the major issues with the old pension scheme? First big issue, liability remained unfunded. As I told you, there was no specific money taken out from the employee's salary so that it can be accumulated or interest would be earned so that the government can give it back later in the form of pension. Nothing like that was done. If that was not done, the other idea was, if you have to give pension later on, every single year ideally, government should set aside some sum of money so that later on we can give it back in the form of accumulated money and then pension would be rolled out. Nothing like that was done. The government of India in the budget provided for pension of every year, but there was no clear plan of how this budget will increase year after year. See, when you are giving pension to someone, understand this. You are paying money to someone who is not contributing to your economy right now. You are paying money to someone who had done his or her job earlier. Now you are just paying them because they had done their job earlier. So they are not contributing to your economy in any productive way. So when the government is giving this money year after year without any extra source of income, it is bound to be a constraint on the government's resources. Not just this, the OPS, the idea of OPS was unsustainable because of other reasons as well. First, as I told you, with increasing DA, the benefits in the form of pension increased every year. So an assumption that if someone got 40,000 pension in the first month doesn't mean that their pension will always be 40,000. The pension will also increase. If, for example, there is an increment of 5% on DA, then even their pension will increase by 5%. So this increment in the pension also is an added burden on the government year after year. Then there's another part of the story. For the other reason, we can be happy also, but we have to be slightly sad as well. Happy because India is now reaching a stage where our healthcare facilities are improving. With improvement in healthcare facilities, that means that the average age of an Indian is increasing, meaning that average number of years till when an Indian is expected to be alive, that is also increasing or improving. Meaning that when a person is alive for longer periods of time, in simple terms, the government would have to give them pension for longer periods of time, as simple as that, right? So the more that the person lives, the more pension has to be given. And because of this increasing life expectancy, that means that the government's payout will be for a longer period of time. All that means the old pension scheme was actually on the path to making the governments bankrupt. And this can be seen in real numbers as well. For example, in 1990-91, the pension bill of the central government used to be 3,272 crores. And the outgo to all the states put together, so all the states put together, they had a pension bill of about 3,131 crores. Now, if you see the numbers in 2020-21, for the center government, their pension bill has jumped 58 times. 58 times, just imagine this. The center's pension bill has reached 1,90,866 crore. While on the other hand, if you look at the states, their situation is even worse. For all the state governments combined, their average bill of pensions has shot up by 125 times to 3,86,000 crores. This is an amount which is unsustainable in the long run, because understand this, the sources of revenue for the government are not increasing at such a rapid pace. Yes, we do have more and more people joining the workforce every year, but we also know that the tax bracket in which we play, meaning that the number of people who actually pay income tax to the government, are still a very, very small fraction of the entire working population. So because we have a very, very small number of people contributing to the government's earning, while the government's outgo in the form of pension is increasing, it was never going to be sustainable. Now, this change happened somewhere in 1998. The interesting idea is, in 1998, the government did not think about changing the old pension system. They actually made a committee for some entirely other purpose. There was a committee made called OASIS, where OASIS stood for Old Age Social and Income Security Project. Now, what exactly was this project? The Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, they made a committee, and the idea was, in India, even today, the problem is that majority of our workers are in the unorganized sector. Now, the problem with people working in the unorganized sector is they don't have any fixed income, and obviously they don't have any fixed pension. They have not made any specific savings that will help them later on. So the objective of this committee was to suggest an idea to the government how to give social security benefits to unorganized workers as well. Especially when they grow old, there is no old age income that they have. So how exactly can we ensure that they get an old age income? When this committee started to work, they looked at the 1991 census numbers. And the committee said only 3.4 crore people, that is less than 11% of India's total working population, had some form of post-retirement income. Now, why should the government be concerned about these people? Let's try and understand this. Why should a government be concerned if you are getting a pension or someone else is getting a pension or not? Let's take a very simple example. Let's assume that there is a person 70, 75, 80 years old who has retired. And in this age, obviously, people are expected to fall ill. People are expected to have health complications. So now if people of that age have some health complications, now there are two options that they have. One option that they would have is, if they have their old money in their bank account, if they're getting their own pension, if they have certain backup, then obviously they might opt for good healthcare facilities, they might opt for a private hospital, etc. However, if they do not have that, if they do not have any backing, if they do not have any money, then the other option that they would have is they would go ahead and try to get admitted in a government hospital, which would not charge them money. Now, government hospital does not charge money from them, but to run a government hospital, Government of India has to give money. So they are spending on healthcare. So if the government is trying to ensure that more and more people have income, more and more people have social security, that is so that the government itself doesn't have to bear that burden later on. So it is the government trying to transfer their burden on the people when the government is trying to ensure that more and more people have social security. And it is not just with this. See, financial independence is always the first step towards living a happy life. Ask anyone. If a person is dependent on their finances on someone else, if they have to ask someone else for money for even the most minute things, they will always be concerned, they will always be unhappy, because their decisions are always dependent on someone else's yes or no. On the other hand, when you have a situation where someone is financially independent, where the person takes his or her own decisions, the person's way of living life would be very, very different. So the government of India has always tried to ensure more and more people achieve that sort of financial independence. Now, when this OASIS report came out, they suggested something. They suggested that government of India should start a scheme where not just the government employees, people outside the government who are working in, let's say, an unorganized sector, they should also be given a chance that you give very small amount of money to the government will invest it, or government will try to earn some interest on that, and later on the government will give you pension on that. So this was a kind of an idea suggested by the OASIS project, that to this unorganized sector, to bring them into the fold of pension, let's do this, let's have them invest a very small amount of money, the government will accumulate that, let's say try and earn an interest on that, and the government will then give them pension at a later stage. At this point of time, there was another expert group that was appointed called High Level Expert Group under B.K. Bhattacharya. Now, this group suggested that this project by the OASIS report, although the report was mainly about the unorganized sector in India, but this expert group said that the same report should be implemented on government officials as well. They said that the same idea of hybrid model means, first, it is not just the government that is giving you pension, you also should contribute some of your salary to get pension later on, number one. Secondly, the pension will not be fixed. Whatever money you invest, whatever money you actually contribute from your salary, that will be invested in the market on the basis of however you want it. If you want it to be invested in a risky option where you can get higher rewards with higher risk, you can go ahead with that. On the other hand, if you want to invest it in a very safe market, let's say government securities, blue chips only, that can also happen. So that kind of an idea came up, and this is what became the new pension scheme, as simple as that. OPS replaced by NPS. Now, what is the new pension scheme? The idea is simple, as I told you. It has two important differences as compared to old pension scheme. First difference, it is contributory. Meaning that the person who will get pension later on, he also has to contribute a part of the salary in the form of this pension. It's not that you will just get pension later on, you have to first contribute every single month a part of your salary. Second, this will not be fixed or will not be defined. As I told you, this actually will be invested in the market. The best part is that you decide how do you want to invest. You have different options. You have an option where you want to take risk, you go ahead with that. You have an option that you don't want to take risk, you have to play very safe, you can go ahead with that as well. But how much pension will you get will not be defined properly. It is not fixed, it depends on the outcome in the market. These are the two major differences. That you have to be a contributor also, and there is no defined benefit as well. Now, how will the money be invested? If you invest in mutual funds, if you invest in certain other saving schemes, you would also know there are many wealth management companies, mutual fund companies, etc. that do this kind of a thing. They take money from you, then they invest it in the market in different options that are available. Similarly, you have an option to choose from different wealth managers. So there are different companies, for example, HDFC, ICICI, SBI, etc. There are different options that you can choose from. If you have heard good things about certain wealth managers, you can choose them and you can see how the money will be invested. The old pension scheme, where 50% of the last dawn salary was to be given, that has gone away now, and the government has ensured that it's not that all of a sudden a lot of burden will come in, because every single year some money will go. Now, who is regulating this? There is a proper regulator The regulator is Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority. PFRDA, this will be the regulator that will regulate this. Now, many experts, including the Reserve Bank of India, have time and time again said that OPS, that is the old pension scheme, was always bad economics. If you look at various state governments right now, you will understand the problem. See, anyways, the Indian government has always been short of revenue. There are various reasons. The tax base that we have, number of people who pay income tax is not very high in India. Many people evade taxes in India. At the state government level, the situation is even worse. Ever since we had the GST or even before the GST, the revenue of the state governments was always in a very bad shape. Unfortunately, in the past few years, we have various governments in the state level going towards a freebie model, where electricity is given free, water is given free, free laptops, all of these are given free. For example, when the government announces that we are waiving off farm loans. Now, those farm loan waivers means the government is saying that, okay, we will try and settle the loan, we'll give some money to the banks. So, all of that means that even at the state government level, their revenue, their exchequer, the money that they have is also drying out. And RBI has also shown this in the past in various reports. For example, let's talk about Himachal Pradesh. Himachal Pradesh, which recently had elections, is famous for the fact that Himachal Pradesh, because it's a hilly state, it doesn't have a lot of industries. So in Himachal Pradesh, number of people working in the private sector is very low. A lot of people in Himachal Pradesh, a lot of their workforce works in the government sector only, somewhere related to the government. So for Himachal Pradesh, just imagine this. Pension as a percentage of their own tax revenue is almost 80%. Just imagine. For every 100 rupees that Himachal Pradesh government earns, they pay 80 rupees just in the form of pension. Now imagine that. They are left with only rupees 20. Now how do you expect that government to invest money in schools, to invest money in healthcare, to invest money on roads, to invest money on various government schemes? How can you even expect the government to do that when they're only left with 20 rupees out of every 100 after giving the pension? This is just pension. We are not even talking about salaries. Just imagine that. And this pension load obviously will keep on increasing year after year as the DA increases. So this is the harsh situation that we are living in. Now, the situation is very bad in Himachal because it has a lot of people working in the government sector. And Himachal has recently announced that we are going back to the old pension scheme as we promised before the election. For Punjab, the percentage is 35%, again very bad. Out of every 100 rupee that the Punjab government collects as a revenue, 35 rupees they pay just in the form of pension. For Chhattisgarh, 24%, for Rajasthan, 30%. The situation is very, very, very bad. Add to that the salary and other expenses of the government, they are hardly left with anything. That is why when you say that development is not happening, we don't have great infrastructure, we have very old infrastructure everywhere, that is the reason the government is just not left with enough money. And the harsh part is, and it might sound very harsh to those people who are working in the government sector or whose family members work in the government sector, but the reality is, to pay pension of those people who are not even working right now, who have worked earlier, to pay pension of those people, you are taking money from today's taxpayers. Today, you, me, we are working, we are paying taxes, and that money is going not for our development, not for development of our road, not for development of our area, nothing. It is going to the pension of retirees who have worked a long time back. So that is the entire problem, that you are taking out money from the future generations to fund your past generations who are not even contributing to your economy right now. The state government debt has increased from 26.3% of the GDP to 31.2% combined. All the states put together have a pension expenditure of 3.86 lakh crore rupees, which is obviously not manageable in the long run. Now this is a very interesting table which shows you again the same thing as a percentage of their revenue, how much the states earn, as a percentage of that, how much they just give in pension. And just look at this number. Himachal Pradesh obviously standing out with almost 80% because a lot of them are working with the government. Then we also have some other interesting examples. Look at Bihar, almost 59% with Bihar. Then there is Odisha, 41.46%. We have Uttarakhand, again a government state where we have a lot of people working for the state government. So there is a pattern here. The pattern mainly is when you have a state which does not have a lot of private sector, which does not have a lot of factories, etc. Because people don't have jobs in the private sector, they opt for the government sector. And because you opt for the government sector, part of the charm is the pension part. And this is where the governments come under a lot of financial pressure. This list tells you that no state is in a very, very good situation. If you try to look at the lowest number, you can see Telangana, 11.8. Even 11.8 is not very, very good. The RBI recently also gave an estimate of the debt of the government of respective states. Just look at this. How huge is the debt of some of the states as a percentage of their state GDP? Punjab, over 45%. Rajasthan, Bihar, Kerala, West Bengal. And even then, these are the states which keep on offering a lot of freebies, because at the end of the day, the governments in power have this kind of a tendency that we are here for only 5 years. It's not that whatever debt we are taking, we personally have to repay. After I am out of power, the next government will come in, they will see how to repay the debt. So this kind of passing on the baton from one government to other government, one government to other government, without realizing that it is the future generations eventually that will have to pay for that. This is why the situation is becoming very, very bad. So the same states which have such a huge debt as a percentage of their GDP, the same states want to go back to this old pension system where the government has not made any budgetary provisions for that, where you are not taking any contribution from the employees as well. Now, there are multiple reports that point out towards this flaws in the pension system. I'll give you examples of two. The World Economic Forum, they have recently started their meeting again. The World Economic Forum in the past have said, for the first time in human history, people aged 65 and over outnumber the children aged 5 and younger. What does this suggest? This suggests that with improving healthcare facilities around the world, people are living longer lives. Since people are living longer lives, the amount of money that the governments have to spend on their welfare, on their healthcare, etc. is also increasing. India right now is still lucky to be in the middle of a demographic dividend, meaning that India still is at a stage where number of people who are in the working age population are still more as compared to those who are dependent. But this demographic dividend for India also will only last till 2035. Once the demographic dividend window closes, meaning that once we have a situation where the number of people who are earning are lesser as compared to number of people who are dependent, when that reversal happens, we will have a very, very serious situation because we will not have enough revenue to support that. Since the World Economic Forum points out towards this is a serious cause of concern. Look at what is happening in China. In China, as the numbers came out, for the first time in about 60 years, their population have actually declined because of their notorious one-child policy that went on for many decades. They have a situation where the working age population right now is much lower as compared to the population that is dependent. So China also has to feed a lot of its dependent people. It has also resulted in slowing down of their economy. Many Western writers have written that China should not expect a very high growth rate because of these problems. And India might also start facing the same after 2035. So we have to be very, very careful. Now there's again one very interesting international index called the Mercer CFA Institute Global Pension Index. This is an index that actually gives rankings of pension systems of various nations around the world. This, in the 2022 edition, only suggested or only investigated the pension systems of 44 countries, where India was given the 41st rank. Means there were a lot of loopholes found in the Indian pension system, even though we have switched to a new pension system. Meaning that in India, still the government is not really capable of handling such a huge pension bill. Now, there are various examples around the world of many countries almost reaching bankruptcy under the load of their own pension bills that they have made up. I suggest all of you to read about Brazil. A few years back, Brazil had a huge crisis when they also realized the same thing as India. See, in a developing country, especially when you have a developing country which is democratic, the political parties also understand that the easiest way and the best way to come to power is by promising a lot of freebies to the people of different types. This works a lot in developing nations. In developed nation doesn't work a lot because in developed nations people are more educated, people understand economics, people understand that if they are taking money for free, eventually it will come back to harm them only or their future generation only in the long run. In developing nations, people don't really understand that. So in developing nations, we have a problem that when we see that the government is actually offering, or a political party offering something free, offering something beneficial to the people, people take it with both hands without realizing or without raising any questions on that. This is the problem that we have. This is the problem that Brazil also faced when they had to revamp their pension system, realizing that a huge chunk of their revenue that the government is earning is just going into pension. Understand this, the entire idea of pension is that you're paying someone who is not contributing right now, who contributed earlier. This obviously will not be sustainable in the long run. Now, there are a lot of very important facts about how pension architecture works in India right now. For example, 85% of current workers are not members of any pension scheme, and thus in the old age they would have an issue. Now, as I told you, when a person doesn't have any pension, doesn't have any social security, in the old age, the problem is that the load lies with the government. It is the government healthcare facility. It is the government that has to take care of them, provide social security. So it is a load on the head of the government and not just the people. Of all the elderly, 57% receive no income support from public expenditure and 26% collect social pension as a part of poverty elevation. See, India, because we have such a huge population, most of them obviously cannot be given job in the government only. So even though you might have worked all your life, at an old age when you have to sustain for many years without any active source of income, this is where the problem now starts to happen and the government has to look into that. 11.4% of elderly get benefits as government ex-workers, cornering 62% of the entire system's expense. So the entire expenditure that the government makes, 62% of that, 62, is just in the form of the pensions that we give. But that pension only covers 11.4% of elderly, remember. It is not that all the elderly, all the old age citizens are getting pension benefits. Only 11.4% of them are getting pension benefits, and out of that also, for that, the government is spending 62% of its expenditure, and it's across the society. For example, if you look at the Indian military's expenditure, look at our defense budget. There are mainly three components of the defense budget where the government actually or the defense ministry spends the money. The three components mainly are salary, pension, and capital expenditure. Capital expenditure means, for example, weapons, infrastructure that they build, etc. Like roads, bridges, whatever they are building, weapons, etc. Any institute that they are building for training, etc. Ideally, for any military to go ahead and modernize, they should have to ensure that the biggest part of their budget is in capital expenditure. But do you know, in India, in the defense budget that we have, the lowest part of the expenditure actually is in the form of capital expenditure. The biggest part that we have is reserved for those kind of expenditures which is not giving anything in return. So the problem actually is that government doesn't have much source of revenue, and when you have very constant, very minute sources of revenue, the government's responsibility to use that more carefully increases even many folds. So government has to be very careful with that. The system for old age pension support had, as I said, about 11.5% of public expenditure. Subnational governments bear, subnational means at the state government, they bear more than 60% of the government's expenditure, which is only going towards pension. The contributory program would also be very hard for the government still, because government would also have to contribute, but still it is better as compared to the old pension scheme when we did not have any contribution from the person who was actually earning. This is all that we wanted to discuss with you about the old pension scheme. I hope that the distinguishing between old pension scheme and the new pension scheme is now very clear to you. I hope all of you know the idea of how pension is significant. Yes, the government has to ensure that there is certain social security for old age people, but in what form should it be given? How should it be given? Should there be certain contribution from people in their working age or not? All of these are questions where the political strata is still divided, and the government at the center level has clarified that we have no intention of going back to the old pension scheme at an all India level. With the RBI also suggesting to many states that you should not go back to the old pension scheme, it remains to be seen whether the state governments continue to go on this path after every elections when they promise more freebies, or do the state governments realize that no, this is bad economics as suggested by the RBI, and they educate people about the perils of the old pension scheme. This is it for today's explained session. Do share this with all your friends who are preparing for the UPSC examination. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel till now, you can hit the subscribe button, you can like the video, and in the comment section, you can keep telling us how did you like this session and what are your suggestions for the next explained session, which, as you know, happens every Friday at 8 p.m. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye. Good night. Jai Hind.